Hello, this is Jason McManus with BIS. In today's presentation, we are going to show you how you can use the data integration platform Grouper to take a random batch of paper, in this particular use case, invoices, run them through a scanner and auto-classify, organize, and extract key data elements off of those and get those into the content management application box. So what you're looking at on the screen currently is just a simple scan interface. In this particular scenario, we have a user that has opened the day's mail, and as part of that, they have a stack of invoices of varying links from various vendors that they have received, and they want to get those put into an organized ECM platform. So here I'm going to take and put my pages in my scanner with my document feeder, and I'm going to hit my scan button. And you should see on the left hand side our pages going through, and you'll notice that we have no separator sheets, no manual intervention was required as far as helping the software get these things broken out, organized. No lead sheets. It was just today's mail, all stacked together and all processed. And we'll flip through a few of these. Just so you can see, we've got a Spartan invoice, a New Wave invoice, an EMC invoice. The EMC one was a multi-page. Some of these may be 3, 4, 5 pages long, and they're just all kind of randomly stuck in this batch. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit complete task. And from the scanning standpoint, we're done. So the files have been sent off to Grouper, and Grouper is now going through a series of activities where it is going to automate the process of organizing these and collecting all the key data elements off of those, so that we can get those pushed into our backend system, which is Box. So let's look at what our output looks like. So here we have a file room called invoices that we created in Box, and all of those documents have now been broke down into folders by the vendor. And we may have multiple invoices from the same vendor in some cases. So we have our Spartan Manufacturing, our Express, I think EMC was one of the ones we saw. There it is. We saw some from Dell that went through the scanner. So here they are, all organized, and if we open up a folder, within the folder we'll see the individual invoices as PDFs, and if they're multi-page files, they'll be multi-page PDFs, and the actual name on the file will be the invoice number. So if we open this one up, we should be able to see that our invoice number, which is right here, is the actual file name that we applied. So we extracted that as part of the automation process. We ran these files through within Grouper, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Let's finish kind of walking through what we ended up with here. So we go back to our list of files, and all of these are text searchable because we output these as text searchable PDF files, so you can search by anything, any element, any word or phrase that might exist within these files. So let's open up the EMC one. So this one we actually had 2 invoices in that batch. So we had the M5 invoice and the 5200481525 invoice. So let's open those up, make sure our software was accurate. So there's our invoice number, and there it is in our name. So out of all these different data elements that were on this, Grouper was able to go auto extract our invoice number, identify which one was the proper one, and use that to populate our field here. Now we also can extract all the additional data elements as well, but we wanted to keep today's presentation very simple. Really what we just wanted to show was paper getting into Box and having it organized and indexed properly, but we could extract every single data element off of this, and we could apply it to index fields within Box. We also could output them to different ERP applications, so whatever financial application you may be using, we could output these data elements into it as well. So how did all of this happen? How did all these invoices get organized in this fashion, and how do we collect those data elements? Well, let's go take a look at Grouper, and let's see the process that we ran these images through. So here is a visualization of the process. So this is what we call our design studio. So a user wouldn't necessarily ever have to see this. So our step one was scan, which was a human step. The next couple of steps are conditioning steps, which are automated steps. So these run in the background. So we OCR'd the pages, and we run through a process we call synthetic OCR, which does some very unique things, things that no one else does, to make sure that we can get to the data accurately, leveraging some of the components of AI like natural language processing to repair bad OCR. Quite a few things we're doing here to be able to get to text and identify text that other platforms just can't do. After it's conditioned and it's text searchable, we then can auto separate the invoices, classify the invoices, and then we're going to extract all the data elements. We then have a human step here, which would be for reviewing questionable data. So let's look at that and see what that looks like. So before we output it, we're going to have a process to go through and auto review anything that might not meet our confidence levels or even some business logic that we apply. So in this case, we processed the first 22 files just fine, and we stopped on invoice 23 because a business rule wasn't met. But the first 22, all our rules were met. So if we were to tab back through some of those different invoices, and we can click through these fields, and we can see all the different data elements that we collected, like here's the invoice number, here's where we found the invoice number. So this is what we use to create the file name when we output this file to Box, but we also could have outputted all these other data elements that we collected. We just chose to keep this one very simple for today's demonstration. So as we click on a field, we see where it extracted it. We also can see what things it found around it, data elements it found near it, that identified that this was the invoice number. So we have a pattern we're looking for here, but then we're also looking for characteristics near our pattern. That comes in very handy with things like a date field. So if we had multiple dates on a document, we have to be able to differentiate between an invoice date and a shipped date, possibly. You know, there's lots of amounts on an invoice. How do we know which one is the total amount? We're not using zones. There's no templates. This is all cognitive capabilities that are built into Grouper, primarily set up using supervised machine learning to go find these pieces of information. What happens when there's an error? Well, when there's an error, we typically have a rule that doesn't get met. Like here, my math doesn't add up. So we stopped here because we can tell our math doesn't add up, and we're off by a negative $1,000. So in this particular case, I usually look at my header information first, and I can see where we had an OCR issue with our freight. So for some reason, it thought this little dash here was a 1. So I take that off, I correct that error, I hit my tab key, and I'm done. So now the information has been corrected. We can move through the rest of the data review process, which would be another free data elements that were inaccurate. But you can tell there's a massive amount of data we're collecting off of these. So the automation level that we're getting off of getting this information is well into the 90 percentile range, high 90 percentile range of characters that we're not having to touch versus characters that we are having to touch, and then getting this information into a platform like Box where it's now organized. We can kick off a workflow process for reviews if necessary, and it's your long-term system of record for easy access getting back to this information. So that's our presentation for today on taking paper files and getting them organized, classified, and into Box. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for your time.